This is a painting of Jesus Christ. Its name is Salvator Mundi, Latin for Savior of the World. For centuries, it was lost, then found, dismissed as a copy, sold for a pittance, restored, and then eventually attributed to the master himself, Leonardo da Vinci. And in 2017, at a Christie's auction in New York, it sold for $450,300,000. $450 million. For the price of this one object, this single canvas covered in layers of oil paint, you could fund a massive portion of the World Food Programme's life-saving work for an entire year. This painting isn't just a masterpiece. This is evidence of a crime against humanity. And today, we're going to investigate not just the painting, but the system that created it. We're going to peel back the layers of varnish and mystique to reveal a world of obscene wealth, cynical financial engineering, and a moral vacuum so profound it should shake you to your very core. Because the question isn't just, why is this painting so damn expensive? The real question is, what kind of a world allows it to be? Let's start with the obvious absurdity. $450 million. How do you even begin to comprehend that number? It's a figure so large it becomes abstract, meaningless. Let's try to make it concrete. The average American earning the median salary would have to work for over 7,000 years to afford this painting, and that is before taxes. But the world of fine art doesn't operate on the same logic as the rest of us. It is a world unto itself with its own physics, its own rules, and its own gravity. A gravity that only seems to pull money upwards. To understand how a painting like Salvator Mundi reaches such a celestial price, you first have to understand the theater in which these prices are made, the auction house. Think of auction houses like Christie's and Sotheby's not as a simple marketplace, but as a kind of grand stage. They're masters of creating spectacle, tension, and desire. The sale of Salvator Mundi wasn't just an auction, it was a global marketing event. Christie's produced a lavish promotional video portraying the painting as a spiritual, once-in-a-lifetime discovery. They took it on a world tour, displaying it to crowds in Hong Kong, London, San Francisco, building a narrative of unparalleled importance. They weren't just selling a painting, they were selling the story of the lost Leonardo. This is the first key to understanding the art market. Value is not inherent, it is constructed. It's a product of storytelling, marketing, and most importantly, consensus among a very small group of extremely wealthy people. The price of a painting isn't determined by the cost of the materials or the hours the artist spent. It's determined by what someone somewhere is willing to pay for it. And in a rarefied atmosphere like this, willingness is a very, let's just call it a flexible concept. The auction itself is a masterclass in psychological manipulation. The rhythmic chant of the auctioneer, the escalating bids ping-ponging across the room, the strategically placed phone bidders shrouded in mystery, it's all designed to create a fever pitch of competition. When the bidding for the painting went on for a dramatic 19 minutes, it wasn't just two people trying to buy a painting. It was a public contest of wealth and ego. The final hammer price becomes not just a sale, but a headline, a new record, a declaration that this object is now officially more valuable than it was yesterday. But this public theater often hides a much more calculated private game. Behind the scenes, the art market is rife with mechanisms that seem designed to inflate prices. There are things called third-party guarantees, where an outside investor agrees to buy the painting for a minimum price before the auction even begins, ensuring a successful sale and setting a high floor for the bidding. Dealers have been known to bid on their own artist's work at auction to drive up the prices and create a public record of higher value, which they can then use to justify higher prices for similar works back in their private galleries. It's a self-perpetuating cycle of manufactured value. The price becomes a story, and the story justifies the price. This leads us to the most unsettling truth about the art market. There is no objective value. The appreciation of art is subjective. This makes its financial valuation incredibly easy to manipulate. Unlike real estate or stocks, there are no fundamentals to anchor the price of a painting. Its value is entirely based on perception, the history of ownership, and the collective belief of a tiny club of global elites. A painting is worth $100 million because a handful of people agree that it is, and one of them is willing to write a check that proves it. So, when we look at the $450 million price tag of Salvatore Mundi, we're not looking at a rational assessment of an object's worth. We're looking at the culmination of a masterfully executed marketing campaign, a dramatic piece of public theater, and a system of valuation so arbitrary and subjective that it borders on absurd. But the absurdity doesn't stop there, because the question remains, why would anyone want to pay that much money? Is the aesthetic pleasure of owning a Da Vinci truly worth $500 million? Or is there something else going on entirely? To answer that, we have to move beyond the auction house and into the even murkier world of how the ultra wealthy use art not just as a decoration, but as a financial instrument. This is where the story goes from being just absurd to being deeply systemically corrupt. So, why do billionaires spend sums of money that could alter the fate of entire communities on a single object just to hang on a wall? The simple and frankly naive answer is because they love art. A more accurate answer is this painting is not a painting, it's an asset. It is a financial tool, a portable store of wealth, and a key player in one of the most sophisticated vehicles for tax avoidance and financial secrecy ever created. Welcome to the world of art finance, where masterpieces are treated less like cultural treasures and more like stocks, bonds, or more accurately, offshore bank accounts. And a central hub of this shadow financial system is a place most people have never even heard of. Let's examine the Freeport. Imagine a fortress, a high security, climate controlled warehouse, often located conveniently next to an airport runway in a country with friendly tax laws like Switzerland or Singapore. That's a free port. Now, this isn't the Wild West. These aren't lawless zones. They're subject to the laws of the country they're in, but they offer a special status where customs duties and certain taxes are suspended. When a billionaire buys a painting for, let's just say, 100 million at an auction in New York, they don't have to ship it to their mansion in London. If they did, they'd be hit with a cascade of taxes, sales tax, import duties, VAT, which could easily add up to tens of millions of dollars. Instead, they can have the painting flown directly to a free port in, let's just say, Geneva. Once inside, the artwork is legally considered in transit, even if it stays there for decades. The import duties and taxes are deferred. The painting simply vanishes from the world, accessible only to its owner in a private, museum quality viewing room, all while remaining largely off the radar of tax authorities. The Geneva Freeport, one of the oldest and most famous, is widely estimated to hold over $100 billion worth of art. As a private parallel museum for the 0.01%, where cultural treasures are squirreled away, unseen by the public, their primary function reduced to being an entry on a billionaire's balance sheet. Think about that. Masterpieces by Picasso, Monet, and yes, Leonardo da Vinci aren't in museums for people like you and me to see. They are sitting in a crate in a Swiss warehouse functioning as a tax-efficient ballast in a global portfolio. As a character in the TV show Succession said about his family's collection, they had like 3 gazillions no one has ever seen hidden away for tax reasons. This isn't fiction. This is basically a documentary. The Freeport is where the art market's don't ask, don't tell culture has thrived. Ownership can be transferred with a simple piece of paper inside the Freeport without the artwork ever moving an inch or authorities being notified. This has made art a very attractive vehicle for money laundering. While regulations have tightened in recent years, the market's emphasis on privacy and the use of shell corporations makes it a high-risk area. Illicit funds can be used to buy a painting, which is then stored in a Freeport. It can be sold within this secretive ecosystem, and the final payout emerges as the proceeds from a legitimate art sale. But even for the merely mega rich, not the criminally inclined, art has offered a smorgasbord of tax avoidance strategies. In the United States, for example, there used to be a loophole known as the like kind exchange. Until the end of 2017, an art collector could sell a painting for, say, 50 million, and as long as they used that money to buy another painting, they could defer paying any capital gains tax. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 eliminated this for personal property like art, but for decades, it was a way to trade up your collection indefinitely with your assets ballooning in value, all without ever giving the taxman his cut. Then there's the donation game. A collector buys a piece of art from an emerging artist for a modest sum. Over the years, through clever marketing and gallery shows, the value of that piece is made to skyrocket. The collector then donates the artwork to a museum and gets a tax deduction for its new, inflated, fair market value. They get to look like a generous philanthropist while writing off a massive amount from their taxable income, a deduction that can be worth far more than their original investment. This is the billionaire's playbook. Art is not an object of beauty, it is a multi purpose financial tool. It is a store of wealth that is more portable than real estate and less volatile than the stock market. It's a way to move money across borders with minimal scrutiny, and most insidiously, it is a sophisticated mechanism for avoiding the taxes that are supposed to fund the very fabric of the society that the rest of us live in. So, when a hedge fund manager buys a Decuti for 300 million or a Saudi prince acquires a Leonardo for 450 million, they aren't just buying a painting. They are acquiring a uniquely versatile asset. They are buying an object that allows them to participate in a global, semi-regulated casino where the chips are masterpieces and the house, a network of auctioneers, dealers, and Freeport operators, always wins. The astronomical prices aren't a bug in the system. They are the system. They're a feature that makes art a more efficient tool for moving and sheltering vast sums of money. But how is that value created in the first place? How does an old canvas, perhaps of dubious origin, get transformed into a financial instrument worth nearly $500 million? That's our next stop. The story of Salvatore Mundi is the perfect case study in how the art market creates value out of thin air. It is a masterclass in the alchemy of turning dust into gold, a process driven by attribution, marketing, and the strategic construction of a minute. For most of its life, this painting was nothing special. In 1958, it was sold at a Sotheby's auction in London for just £45. That's about $1,200 in today's money. It was dismissed as a minor work by a follower of Leonardo, not the man himself. For the next 50 years, it drifted into relative obscurity. Its journey to becoming the most expensive painting in history began in 2005 when it was acquired by a pair of art dealers for less than $10,000 at an estate sale in New Orleans. It was in terrible condition, heavily overpainted and damaged, but these dealers had a hunch, or maybe just more of a hope, that something more lay underneath the grime. They sent it to a renowned restorer who spent years cleaning and repairing. And then came the crucial step, attribution. The dealers began to assemble a case. They pointed to the smoky blending of colors that was a hallmark of Leonardo. They convened panels of experts who, after much debate and some notable dissent, gradually began to lean towards the conclusion that this was a lost original. In 2011, London's National Gallery gave the painting its biggest seal of approval by including it in their landmark Leonardo da Vinci exhibition, effectively endorsing it as the real deal. This is the moment the alchemy happens. The painting is no longer just a painting, it is now the lost Leonardo. Its value is no longer measured in the thousands, but in the millions. In 2013, it was sold to an art dealer for a reported $83 million, who almost immediately flipped it to a Russian oligarch for $127.5 million. The oligarch, of course, was the one who put it up for the auction in 2017, where it fetched its record-shattering $450 million price. Look at the progression. From under 10,000 to 450 million, in just over a decade. Did the painting change? No, it is the same collection of wood, gesso, and pigment. What changed was the story attached to it. The story is what creates the value. A painting by a follower of Leonardo is a decorative object. A painting by Leonardo himself is a piece of history, and the art market is a machine for monetizing that significance. But the story of Salvator Mundi isn't without its controversies. To this day, many respected scholars doubt its authenticity. They point to its poor condition and aspects of its execution that they find crude. There's also the fact that the Louvre in Paris, the world's most prestigious art museum, never exhibited the work. Reports suggest a major disagreement over how the painting would be presented, with French officials and curators reportedly unwilling to attribute it solely to Leonardo, while the owner allegedly insisted on it. And here lies the most cynical part of this entire spectacle. In the end, whether it's real or not almost doesn't matter. What matters is that enough of the right people, influential dealers, auction houses, collectors, agreed to believe in the story, or at least to see the financial advantage in promoting it. The authentication of art isn't a pure scientific process. It is a process of building consensus. Once an object enters the stratosphere of the ultra high-end market, its price is sustained by the shared interest of all its players in protecting their investment. To question the authenticity of Salvator Mundi now would be to threaten the foundation of a $500 million asset. This isn't a unique story. The art world is full of them. The career of Basquiat, who went from a street artist to international star in just a few years, was fueled by a similar process. Powerful dealers and collectors saw his talent, but they also saw a marketable story. The graffiti artist, the tragic genius, they championed his work, controlled his market, and when he died at just 27, his myth was sealed and the value of his work was secured. In one infamous case, a Basquiat painting titled Hannibal was smuggled out of Brazil with a declared value of only $100. It was later appraised at $8 million. The value isn't just in the art, it's in the story, the brand, and the ability to move that value across borders. This process of creating a myth, manufacturing consensus, and defending the price at all costs is the engine of the art market. It's a game of smoke and mirrors where perception becomes reality and belief is monetized. It's how a canvas and some paint can be transformed into one of the most valuable objects on planet Earth. But this isn't just a game, because while this spectacle unfolds, another far more brutal reality is playing out for billions of people right now. So let's return to that number, $450 million. Now let's talk about another one, nearly 282 million. According to the 2024 Global Report on Food Crises, that is the number of people who faced high levels of acute food insecurity in 59 countries in 2023. That's an increase of 24 million people from the year before. Let that sink in. In a world where one person can spend nearly $500 million on a painting, hundreds of millions of men, women, and children do not know where their next meal is coming from. The number of people experiencing catastrophic famine-level hunger has multiplied several times over since the mid-2010s. In places like Sudan and the Gaza Strip, the situation is so severe that agencies have warned of ongoing or imminent famine. This is the central crime. It's not a crime of law, but it's a crime of morality, of priorities, of a broken global system. And the most damning part of this crime is that it is completely unnecessary. The world produces enough food to feed every single person on the planet. The Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN has stated this repeatedly. This is not a problem of scarcity. This is a problem of distribution, access, and power. Hunger persists not because we lack food, but because people are too poor to afford it. Because conflict prevents it from reaching them. Or because climate change has destroyed their ability to grow it. Conflict is a massive driver of acute hunger. War destroys farms, disrupts supply chains, and turns food into a weapon. Then there's climate change, droughts, floods, and extreme weather are devastating agricultural communities, particularly in the poorest parts of the world. And then there's also poverty. The raw, brutal fact is that hunger is a feature of an economic system that treats food not as a fundamental human right, but as a commodity to be bought and sold for profit. Within this context, the nine-figure art auction is not some separate, unrelated event. It's the flip side of the same coin. It is the most grotesque symptom of the same disease. A global economic system that has become radically untethered from human need, morality, and what is truly important in this world. The same system that allows wealth to concentrate so extremely that spending 450 million on a painting becomes a viable financial strategy is the same system that leaves hundreds of millions in poverty. The logic of the Freeport, a space designed to minimize taxes and maximize secrecy, is the logic of late stage capitalism in its purest form. It prioritizes the frictionless movement of capital for the elite over the fundamental needs of the layperson. The money isn't the problem. The world is awash in it. The problem is where that money is, where it flows, and what it's used for. The hundreds of billions of dollars worth of art estimated to be sitting in the Geneva Freeport is a testament to a colossal misallocation of resources. That is wealth that is not being taxed to pay for schools, hospitals, or social safety nets. It's dead money hoarded in a dark warehouse serving no purpose other than to appreciate in value for its owner. And while that wealth sits in the dark, children are starving in the light. In 2024, an estimated 42.8 million children under 5 years old were suffering from wasting, a life-threatening form of malnutrition. 12.2 million of them were suffering from its most severe form, which weakens their immune system so much that a common cold can be fatal. This is the reality that exists alongside the glittering auction houses and the silent, sterile corridors of the Freeports. They're two sides of the same world. The existence of one is predicated on the other. Now, if you've stuck with me this long, guys, I know this is a heavy topic and it can feel overwhelming. It's easy to feel powerless in the face of a system this vast and this broken. But the first step to changing anything is to understand it. The reason channels like this exist is because pulling back the curtain and exposing how these systems really work is so crucially important. It's about taking away the mystique and showing you what it really is. These videos take a huge amount of research to put together, so if you feel like you've learned something, if this has made you think, then the single best way you can support what we're doing is to subscribe to the channel. Hitting that button helps us continue to investigate these topics and bring them to a wider audience. It lets us know that there's a demand for content that asks the hard questions, so if you're not already, please take a moment to subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. So what have we learned? We've learned that the astronomical prices of fine art aren't a reflection of some mystical value, but the product of a carefully orchestrated performance of marketing, myth-making, and psychological manipulation. We've learned that for the global super elite, art is a powerful financial instrument, a tax-efficient portable asset used to store wealth, move money, and operate in a world of financial secrecy. We've uncovered the world of Freeports, the secret warehouses where a huge portion of our global cultural heritage is hidden from public view, functioning as little more than poker chips in a high-stakes game. Most importantly, we have placed the seemingly frivolous world against the grim backdrop of global hunger. We've seen that the coexistence of half-billion-dollar paintings and mass starvation is not a coincidence. It is a direct and damning symptom of a single, unified global system. The system hardwired to concentrate wealth at the very top and to treat basic human needs as an afterthought. The art market does not directly cause starvation, but it is perhaps the most potent symbol of the grotesque inequality that makes starvation inevitable. It demonstrates in the most vivid way possible that our world does not suffer from a lack of resources, but from a catastrophic failure of distribution and a complete collapse of our moral priorities. The problem isn't the painting. The problem is the world that makes a $450 million price tag for a painting possible. It is a world that has come to worship at the altar of the market, that has accepted the commodification of everything from our food to our culture. It is a system where political will is bent towards protecting the assets of the wealthy rather than ensuring the survival of the poor. Ending hunger is not a technical challenge, it is a political one. It would require a fraction of the wealth currently being hoarded in offshore accounts and Freeport warehouses. It would require a global commitment to peace, fair wages, climate justice, and a recognition that things like food, water, and shelter are fundamental human rights, not commodities. Salvatore Mundi, the savior of the world, the irony is almost too much to bear. In our world, the savior has been bought and sold, privatized, and locked away in a vault. It has become a symbol not of salvation, but of a world that desperately needs saving from itself. A world that has gained the ability to price everything and in the process has lost the ability to value anything. And that is the biggest crime of all.